Game begin.
All right. Hello and welcome back to the Spike Colony podcast. I am here with my regular co-host, who's a little froggy today, Michael J. Flo.
Was I froggy 2 weeks ago when I was on?
No, you were fine 2 weeks ago. We recorded.
But I said I would be froggy, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so I have, I looked it up. It's called like post-viral something. So like I'm not sick, but I have like the remnants of being sick in my throat. So this can last like 8 weeks. How crappy is that?
That's not good for podcasting, that's for sure. I had a friend who had
started my other podcast also at the same time, so this is not the best timing.
It's also like I had a friend who had like a problem similar to this. I mean, I don't know if it's exactly, the same as your problem, but a problem similar to this, and he had it last for a while. He wasn't sure if he was like allergic to something. It was just like all crazy. So
no, they know what it is. It's like I had a cough, right, and I coughed my lungs out or whatever. I'm just very irritated, and so like it's funny, laughing actually makes me cough uncontrollably, but I'm not sick anymore. Like I could literally Pog came over last week and we went to go run because we have our little running club. We went to go run a 5K. He obviously quit two of the 5K in, but I could have kept going. So I'm fine from a lungs capability. It's just I sound like I'm dying. And in meetings, like actually last week, I was talking like a very old man. But I think I'm mostly on the mend now.
Well, good to have you, and it sounds like you've got news from the land of the weekly Premodern League in New York City.
Lan texted me last night, and he says, Steven says I'm qualified for the finals. What does that mean? That was pretty funny. I think Lan's in second. I believe, by my count, I don't know if this is right. By my count, I believe I am tied for first with Rich Busey. We both stasised it up this past week, and he went 1-2. I think he was 3 points ahead of me, and I went 2-1. So the vanquisher of both of us was playing a deck that I don't think very many people talk or think about. But my God, is it a great strategy in the inbred metagame of New York City. And that deck is Reanimator. So I actually just wanted to talk about Reanimator today.
All right. Well, what did you learn?
So here's the thing about Reanimator. Well, first of all, I want to commend my opponent. I think his name is Gregory. He played awesome against me. And so in game one, I had him under stasis, but like I was like winning. I'm putting that in air quotes, but I hadn't locked the game out or anything. But he just waited until he could cast like 2 unmasks and 2 cabal therapies in one turn. Then he ritualed out Necroma and it killed me with one move, which was like really, like I just didn't see it, like he'd obviously been planning for this for a very long time. So that was pretty impressive. Game 2, I had to show him my deck though. So the reason I think this deck is so good is a couple of reasons. But the most important of which is he played Putrid Imp. So Putrid Imp is just B for a zombie imp. It's a 1/1. And it has the ability to discard a card from your hand. Putrid Imp gains flying until end of turn. And it has Threshold. Putrid Imp gets +1/+1 and can't block. If you have Putrid Imp in play, it's real hard to kill the opponent with Black Vice. So in game 2, I went down to 1 Black Vice, but I put one of my Cursed Totems in my deck. And so I just showed him, I'm like, we're going to go to time. You want to concede this game, we'll just play game 3 for real. It's like, how are you going to win? I just showed him I had a Cursed Totem in my deck. So otherwise, I would have beaten him with Gaia's Blessing Recursion, even if I couldn't get him under the Black Vice. Because I think I had 3 Propagandas in play. So my strategy was to side in my other 2 Propagandas, which were highly effective. And then in game 3, he just had a very key chain of vapor and then set up in a chroma and the number of answers that the stasis deck has to the reanimator deck are pretty narrow. So you have chain of vapor, which is obviously outstanding against a deck that just uses a ton of resources to get one big creature in play. But if they can, kind of stick in a chroma, which doesn't tap, they can just kill you. So, and they also have cards like Dark Ritual, which allow them to do things like pay for propaganda, even if they seem to be locked under stasis.
They cannot pay for propaganda with Dark Ritual.
Can't they enter their attack phase and cast the Dark Ritual?
Dark Ritual is not a mana source. It is a spell. So during your declare,
that ever happened, but
yeah. So during for the listeners who want to understand the rules, when you enter your attack phase, your declare attack phase begins with the declaration of attackers. Propaganda taxes the declaration. It's not a triggered ability. It's not whatever. It's just a cost associated with attacking. So propaganda and elephant grass will make it such that you cannot pay with any spell-based mana source. You could not pay for it with a Lion's Eye Diamond either, I think, because Lion's Eye Diamond is a mana source, but it can only be activated at the timing of an instant, and there's just no timing for you to pay, do that. But that would actually be an interesting. I actually would love to ask a judge if the Lion's Eye Diamond propaganda interaction
we
works.
could ring up Jen, but I believe that Jen is in Las Vegas for the Pro Tour. By the way, shout out to the Great One. The Great One is X-1 right now, although he did not play himself. He came back for the Pro Tour because they reprinted Dark Confidant, and he hasn't played since 2019. I was on the team with the Great One back in, I want to say 2015 or so. But he, greatness at any cost. He has not played in 6 years. Smart money had him as the 3rd best player of all time until the emergence of Gabriel Nassif. But he came back for this one. The bit was supposed to be that he would play himself because he was reprinted in Final Fantasy. But instead, he's currently undefeated with Omniscience combo. So shout out to TGO. I would be so happy if TGO made the top 8 of this Pro Tour. The last time he took a long extended break, he came back and immediately top 8'd the Pro Tour. And then he won the Masters Series the same year. He's so good.
I actually cannot fathom what it must be like to be so good at Magic that you can just do that.
He took 6 years off after taking 5 years off after taking 15 years off. And he just literally the first time he came back, he top 8'd the Pro Tour and won the Master Series.
I don't know if you caught this joke on the Drive podcast with Andy Levine, but Andy Levine is an ultimate Frisbee player of
Andy Levine is literally, he could be the most interesting man in the world commercial.
Yeah.
Right? So, he's such a polymath.
So he has this background, and so I made a joke. I was just the best ultimate Frisbee player in the world probably would not be better at ultimate Frisbee than LeBron, right?
I did listen to that podcast.
Yeah.
I listened to your LAN podcast last week, which I really thoroughly enjoyed.
I mean, we needed our wolf though, because we had the bag of rice and we had the chicken, but we needed the wolf, the Michael J. Wolf, to complete our farmer's trifecta. But in any case, I just think about that. It's if Magnus Carlsen played Magic, or any great mind, if any of the poker greats, if Phil Ivey played Magic. It's
so funny because TGO is so humble and unassuming, when you talk to him and when he does interviews and everything, but he is internally the most confident. I don't want to say arrogant because he's such a good guy or whatever, but he's just so unassuming when you talk to him. He's oh yeah, I guess I'm doing pretty well or whatever. But John once said that Bob was the most confident player that he had ever played. And
the most confidant player you've ever played.
Literally the most confidant player. But I mean, it is, It is like so weird. Like he literally came back to play himself. And then what ended up happening is, so Bob, let's say, quote unquote, works in the tabletop gaming industry. I believe he owns Ultra Pro. So he got whacked by Trump tariffs. So he's been working super hard and hasn't had time to test. So he played one league with the combo deck, the Omniscience combo deck. He's just like, let's run it. And he's currently like 7-1 on the day. Like it is impossible to think about that he could just pick up.
By the way, this is a Pro Tour that has limited as well. So he's
from Chicagoland.
Yeah,
he has the DN. Who do you think the anchor of Chicagoland is? Right, when you think about, like, you know, obviously the great mecca of American limited is Madison, Wisconsin, which is
you know that Bob linked up with some of the Premodern guys during LobsterCon.
Well, look, I am such a huge fan of him. Obviously, a friend of his from way back when I was on the same team as him a few years ago, and I nothing would make me happier than Bob Raffle stomping this Pro Tour. You know, Shada Yasuoka is also in really good position, and Paulo Vitor Damo de Rosa has the coolest deck of the Pro Tour. He's playing a completely unknown deck going into this one, and so and like Ely Cassis is not a Pro Tour Hall of Famer, but we're the same age, so it would be kind of insane for like all these guys and they're like
the old head Pro Tour. Yeah.
They're all doing super well right now. Like Ely's X1, Bob's X1, Shouta is X1, and I think Pablo is X1. So then there's only 7-0 on the day or whatever.
So what percentage of the room do you think can even recognize Bob?
I don't know. He was the biggest. I mean, before we understood how much better John and Kai were than everybody else, I think Bob was probably like maybe the second most recognizable American player. I mean, Dave Price was pretty recognizable.
Yeah,
he was like the Tiger Beat poster boy, or maybe Brian Hacker.
I mean, the funny thing to me is that one, Dark Confidant has been reprinted with different arts now,
so many
multiple times, and he's gotten older because
he looks exactly the same.
The other half of the anecdote is that the homies that went out to dinner with Bob Maher, half the table did not immediately recognize him. So he's like introducing himself. He's like, "Oh, I'm Bob." Anyways, I'm stealing this story from the Premodcast. Go check out the Premodcast for the great Bob Maher story. Meanwhile,
you know the story of it's a World Championship in New York 2007, and Patrick and Nassif both make the top 8, right? And so I'm working or whatever, but it's in New York. So just meet us for dinner, right? So we go, and it's like Jeff Magid, who's going out with Emily Ratajkowski at this point. Mark Herberholz, myself, Chapin, and Nassif are at dinner, right? And then like the bill comes, and I go to like reach for my wallet, and Herberholz smacks my hand. He's like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
He's just like,
yeah.
These fuckers made top 8. So, and they ordered so much wine, you know? So like, cause Nassif is French.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So like, I think I like, you know, Chapin and Nassif like have like some sort of eye contact. Nassif picks up the bill. A woman walks up to the table, and she's just like, "Oh, I don't know if I should, you know, recognize you guys from somewhere." And Patrick starts going into like this, you know, Patrick Chapin monologue. He's like, "Oh, you know, we're in town for the Magic the Gathering World Championships. Gabriel," he calls him Gabriel. "Gabriel and I have just made the."
His name is Gabriel.
Yeah.
What do you mean he calls him?
They call him
Gab.
Fucking Yellow Hat, or, you know, Nassif. He's like, "Gabriel and I have just made top 8. He's about to say, "Gabriel and I have just made top 8. But in the middle of this sentence, she cuts him off, looks over, and goes, "Are you Mike Flores?" And that is like my crowning achievement, that I'm at this table with 3 Pro Tour champions and Emily Ratajkowski's boyfriend and some random woman off the street. I was like, "Are you Mike Flores?"
All right. So the eagle-eared listeners will have heard this story before. And in exchange for 120 play points on Magic Online, I will send you a code for 120 play points on Magic Online if you can identify the episode that Mike told this story before, because I know exactly which episode it is. And so if any of the listeners know to pull that one from our archives, I'm excited to find out. Yeah, I feel like Who's the Beatdown and that dinner are probably like the two things that the two crowning achievements of your career.
Once I was best man at Tony Sai's wedding, and we went to Churrascaria Plataforma for his bachelor party. Right, that's where he wanted to go. Right, so there's a lot of famous Magic players there or whatever, and it also happened to be my birthday, right? But I didn't say anything. Like most people didn't know it was my birthday. And Chris Bakula is there. He's a vegetarian, so he's just like at this like unlimited steak palace. He's just like not happy about this. And somebody comes up and is like, "Oh, are you Mike Flores?" To me, Bakula is just like, his twofold argument was, did you pay that guy to come up? And I didn't, right? Like, he's just like, and then second of all, he's just like, did you trick everyone into just coming to this stupid steakhouse for your birthday? It was like the twofold thing. But neither of those things was true. That was actually just like, that was the night that we wanted to do.
I can see where the meddling mage is coming from on that one.
Well, I mean, it's obvious that like those are logical things that you might think.
Which are the
but that neither of them was actually true.
How many invitational wizards have been at the same dinner together at one time, do you think?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I've personally been at dinner with at least 2, right?
Has there ever been 3 though at the same dinner? That would be the threshold, right?
I mean, I've been to dinners, I think, with John and Chris more than once. I've known them for a long time.
Right, that's true. They just regularly they're in the hang circle.
You literally were at John's
just need
house
to,
and
Chris was there, yeah. The like cube day. Yeah, cube day. Okay, so we just need to pull in the third. We just need Bob to come by. Or Darwin. Bob actually did a cube event in Madison recently.
I'm sure I've had dinner with Bob and John at the same time at some point. I must have. When John had the Broome Street apartment, it was a big apartment, and I think he always had all the Magic players over.
Ivan Espinoza is XN2. Guy is straight grinding. I think I played against him at an SCG the one time I went to an SCG. But yeah, I have no more standings. I'm sure we can find it on MTG Melee. But yeah, Pro Tour, after all these years, still extremely fun to follow, and of course fun because
just cheer for your friends.
Yeah, people are there. I mean, it's like, I think it's just so, I don't know. I got it into my head, who knows if it's true, but like, I kind of just, one of the things, and this isn't even debatable, right? It's like, if you reintroduced Magic the Gathering in 2025, just like cold, right? Like whatever you could start with, let's just say we started with Foundations, right? Foundations is like the reintroduction, but there was nothing before it, right? Like you could not get anybody to play this game. I'm pretty sure this would just be like a really, really difficult game to get people into. But because it got such a head start, and
it's weird. It spawns new players every day, though.
It does. I think. I mean,
like Final Fantasy was the biggest. All the pre-releases in New York were sold out.
Right, but I would argue that it's like the momentum, right? Like it's such a unique and novel thing, and it's built up so much of this. Like it's built up places.
I saw an Avatar: The Last Airbender ad on Instagram yesterday, and I kind of got pretty excited.
Yeah, for the
and I'm not
for that set.
And I hate all this like spaceships and race cars, and but I kind of want to summon Avatar Aang now.
But I don't know if you just like think about it, it's just kind of like, can you imagine? Like, I mean, it's hard because we just know it now, right? But if that just wasn't there, it might be something else. But there's just like game stores. There's like entire stores, places of being that are like completely centered around Magic. It's like the same thing. If I go to a new city, I can look for a coffee shop. I can also just find people playing Magic the Gathering, somewhere in every like major metropolitan area in the world. And it's just kind of like a little unreal. But I could not imagine that the like qualities of the game would be able to survive in this landscape against, you know, whatever else people have. But it's also just impossible to think about because just so much of strategy games and trading cards and whatever just like wouldn't exist if Magic wasn't there first. So, but I think it's like, I mean, to me, like, I know that you're, you know, you are the most capitalistic mind in the planet. All you care about is building capital. And I would have such a hard time pitching Magic to anybody who wanted to, like, you know, get their 10x their 100x their company and like super grow or anything, because I'm just like, you just can't get everyone to play Magic. But the people that do play Magic are like, you know, addicted, right? So I don't know.
Let's talk about Reanimator. Speaking
All right.
of capitalism, speaking about 10xing your return on mana, you cast like a Lotus Petal, which costs 0, and then you have like a Verdant Force in play. It's pretty good. So
Verdant Force is pretty good against Stasis.
I was so taken with this Reanimator deck, in part because, you know, it beat Rich and it beat me, right? So like, if I had gone 3-0, I'd have sole ownership of first place, and if Rich had gone 2-1, he would have sole ownership. But I was lucky enough that he went 1-2.
Well, I mean, we also have to figure out how this stuff is calculated, because
I assume it's 3 points for a win. That's
does that make sense though? Because if Lan 3-0'd 3 meetups, that's 18 points per meetup, and Lan has 30 points.
Maybe I'm completely getting it wrong.
It could be just like 2 points a win or something. That would make more sense.
I don't know. I have 1 3-0 and a bunch of 2-1s.
Wait, no, hold on. 3 times 3 is 9. No. You're probably right. It's probably just match points. Because Lan, it's not 18. I did math wrong. It's just 3 times 3. So you got 9 points per meetup. He won 3 meetup, and then he probably just picked up
my
10th win.
My strategy was to side in my extra propagandas. I thought they were really good, but like the problem is you have Chain of Vapor, which is theoretically pretty good against these, you know, impossibly expensive creatures that you can't cast easily out of your hand. But then they could just sacrifice a land and bounce your propaganda, which like isn't the worst thing in the world, but it does kind of set you behind, because a Stasis by itself won't stop an Acroma or a Verdant Force. You actually need propaganda, and they can do stuff, you know? So it's I found the deck to be incredibly impressive. Putrid Imp is perfectly positioned for, again, the Stasis overrepresentation in New York. And this deck is just great against certain kinds of decks, right? Like a second turn Phantom Neshoba or Verdant Force is going to beat any of the aggro decks in the format. And I was just like, why do you play Rorik's Bladewing? I feel like a Chrome is better. And they have good reasons. They're like, well, you can't
animate
dead. Yeah.
You kind of don't want to animate dead anything, though, because that -1/-0 is like a real pain in the ass.
And I was just like, why don't we all play Reanimator? This is just the best deck. It's got like Sickening Dreams to stop decks that go wide. You know, I got my butt kicked by Unmasked Cabal Therapy, etc. You know, man, this deck is so good. And then Rich says to me, he's just like, dude, Swords to Plowshares is the best card in the format. And I was just like, oh, that's why we don't all play Reanimator. This deck is awful against Swords to Plowshares. But I just haven't played a Swords to Plowshares deck in a while, so I forgot.
Yeah, I mean, I think Reanimator is definitely interesting. It has a lot of qualities that are similar to the like black-red Reanimator and Legacy. I'm like a black-red Reanimator sicko and just a combo sicko. People don't know this about me. I'm just like, I love Solidarity. I love Iggy Pop. I played both those in Legacy, so that's why I played Frantic Storm and Iggy Pop in Premodern. But the one Premodern combo deck that I've played in Legacy that I haven't played in Premodern is Reanimator. And when I've played against it, I have noticed that you've got, you know, all the tools. You have Unmasked Cabal Therapy, Duress if you want it. You don't have Entomb, so you don't have all the tools. You don't have Faithless Looting, but you do have Careful Study, right? And you've got Ritual and Lotus Petal, and you've got Animate Dead and Reanimate. So you've got kind of the good stuff. I gotta say that Putrid Imp is probably like the one card I'm like a little bit mellow on, just because
Black Vice.
I know it beats specifically Black Vice.
That's like I mean, look, I'm not saying Reanimator is the be all and end all deck, but it sure felt like it when like two of the leading players were on Stasis that night.
Well, yeah, I mean it's like kind of funny. I'm trying to imagine it from the point of view of the person who's just like rolling up to meet up, and they're like, man, I'm so excited to play 3 rounds of Premodern, and they get paired against Stasis twice. So it's like, even if they beat them and go 3-0, it's just like, well, that was my evening.
I mean, that's SWB the night that I played Stasis last. If you read his
yeah, he just plays against Stasis twice. Or I mean, I played against Goblins twice at the last meetup. I think SWB played against Goblins twice.
5 and gave me the play, and then laughed at me.
Yeah.
The third turn, it was so bad.
Well, coming up, we've got the Bearded Dragon tournament, which is a week from tomorrow. So it's on Sunday, the 29th. But
there's Connecticut tomorrow, right?
Yeah. So Connecticut goes pretty regularly. That's a short drive away. And then, of course, the Sacred Torch. But I will say that Reanimator is kind of an interesting sleeper pick deck that has a good matchup against Elves, Goblins. It probably ends up still even against Burn, right? It kind of has to still get its stuff together, and then
I mean, I don't know, man. I as you know, as hot and cold as I can be, I'm probably the biggest, spiritual Burn stan in the entire format. I don't want to be playing against second turn Burden Force or Phantom Neshoba.
Right, but you turn off Reanimate pretty well. It's like take 7 and then the entire mana base is non-basics.
Yeah, but
that deal damage, by the way.
They take 7 one time and then they get that life back. Or here's the thing, if you ever
that's if and only if it's Phantom Neshoba though.
But if you let's say you take 7 on turn 2, right? You have a Verdant Force in play. You buy 7 by having a 7/7 in play. They can't even damage you with Ball Lightning. It's like you get it back.
So Verdant Force costs 8 mana.
Okay,
by the way.
Fine. Take 8.
So they're at 12, and they also tapped a City of Brass, so they're at 11. So 11.
Now the way you put it this way.
11 divided by 11 divided by 3 is 4. So I don't know if I've got 4 cards in hand. I have an inkling that I might be able to pull something off on the burn side, especially with Price of Progress access.
Okay, let me tell you what deck is not good. I brought it and I used it as my decoy deck. I flirted with the idea of playing it, and then I didn't play it. I looked around the room and I'm like, this deck would be suicide. Black-green Tempting Worm discard, Pitiless Rack. I mean, how bad are the following cards against this deck? Ravenous Rats, Tempting Worm, it's like Stupor. Every card of this deck is atrocious. I played against SWB. We played 2 games. He played Enchantress, and I mean, he showed me the front half of his hand and then the back half of his hand. How bad is Ravenous Rats against Enchantress's presence? It's so bad. Why did we ever think this deck was good?
I don't know, actually. I don't know.
We thought it was oh, this is the next deck, right? This deck is going to murder the red metagame. It doesn't murder shit.
Well, but actually, it only murders Burn, right?
No,
it's 4 Tempting Worm.
Andy and I played a set, and he won 7 out of 10.
All right. Well,
he won a game that I had 2 Tempting Worms. And I'm like, this deck sucks, right? So, he just, sends Ball Lightning and Jackal Pup or something. I'm like, I have to bite. What am I supposed to do, right? You can eat the Jackal Pup and make them take 5, but does that even do anything? You have to absorb the Ball Lightning, or he's gonna kill you, right? It's so bad. I mean, it seems like it should be good, but he won 7 out of 10. And I mean, this is supposed to be the Ravenous Rats Tempting Worm deck is supposed to be great against Burn. Didn't do shit. It was horrible against Enchantress. And I don't know, could it feasibly beat Stasis? I don't even know. I guess you win the rack. I don't know, man. I don't know.
Discard decks can pull one over on stasis sometimes. I experienced that firsthand with my stasis run, although I probably could have played it better. And the like check stasis player was like sideboarding Library of Lang, which is one way to go about that.
I'm just saying, my main deck includes Ravenous Rats and Tempting Worm against a deck with Animate Dead and a Chroma. I mean, it's like, what if your opponent just like, first turn, land, like, I don't know, like an innocuous.
I'm not arguing if
like first turn.
I'm not arguing if the deck that nobody plays, Black Green Pitless Rack, versus the deck that mostly nobody plays, Reanimator, is a good matchup for Pitless Rack. I'm also not very interested in what happens, because I'm pretty sure that matchup is just not going to happen to anyone. Period.
Well, it could have happened if I played my Decoy deck.
Well, that's why it's a Decoy deck. Well, what are your thoughts going into the top 8 playoff?
Probably. I didn't have time to make your no untappers Elves deck. That's why I pinged you this week.
It's actually one of each untapper, and I will have you know that I played a match where I drew my one of Priest of Titania in the Elves mirror, and then I survivaled for both of my untappers to make 15 mana on turn 2 and get a Masticore.
I don't know if I have enough cards to make my Elves deck and your Elves deck, but I probably
no, just try. There's no more Elves deck. My Elves deck is the only Elves deck.
Now the Elves deck.
Yeah, it's now the Elves.
I was
deck.
just like, oh, can I keep
mark my words? Like some time in the future, there will be
Chartooth Cougar on. Is it Tuesday?
I don't have Chartooth.
I don't own Chartooth.
The Chartooth Cougar is the one thing you don't have to play. Like you could just play a Tusker.
I also only own 2 Biorhythms.
You can play a Tusker or you can play a Granger. In fact, I would rather play a Tusker, as insane as it sounds.
So why did you put Chartooth Cougar in the deck to confuse me? I'm not smart.
Yeah,
I'm an old man. Listen to
I just wanted to see what would happen, and what happened was I did not like. It was not better. I think I put it on the battlefield one time, and I was like very tickled and entertained by it.
4/4 for 100 mana. How could it be good?
Listen, you have 100 mana with Elves like at all times.
No, your deck
right?
only has like 10 mana.
Okay, sorry, it's only 10 mana. Okay. Chartooth Cougar is 6.
About this, you can do 10. My deck can make 3,000 mana. So shut up.
So Tusker, I think is better because it is both a 6/5 for 7, which is pretty good. Like it can take down a Mystic Enforcer, which is pretty important.
As a 6/5 for 7 is quote pretty good.
Yeah,
it has no abilities.
Yeah, I will say that even if I had 7 mana, I'm probably cycling the Croson Tusker.
I mean, like,
but sometimes
I was playing Lanny Rock and I rebought a Tusker with Volrath Stronghold. You like made fun of me. And I was just like, you put these cards in the deck, and you're just like, I'm still making fun of you. These cards suck.
You fell for the Decoy deck. I brought the Decoy deck out, and you just took the bait, and you're like, I'm building this.
I lost the fucking meetup at 3-0. I cared about that loss. It was pretty funny. I cared about losing that match to you randomly at David Tao's house more than the finals loss I had in an RCQ earlier that week.
Yeah, that's because Premodern's all that matters.
To be fair, I won the next RCQ. But I cared about it more than that RCQ loss.
Not to mention the PSS, which I'm sure you've erased from your memory. But
I forgot about that. I had excised that part of my brain with a scalpel, but now you've reintroduced it into my brain. Yeah, I care about that a lot.
Yeah, the rock is not good. Yeah.
Here's the thing that bothers me. I was like mostly resolved, and I'll just play Premodern, and then I can play Standard on Arena and not worry about it too much. But like people are playing Standard, and I'm like watching the Pro Tour, and I'm like, I'm literally better than this guy. Like they're playing Standard, and I'm like, this makes me so mad. And then like I'm like, I guess I can play in an RCQ, and then like Rebel will send me a deck list, and I'm like, if I played in 3 of these, I'd win one of them. Like that's like the next thing in my head, and I'm like, but then you're right. Like I'm not gonna put in the time to go.
And you're not Bob. If you could just show up,
yeah, so
that'd be one thing.
Me is I'm like, I'm literally better than the guy on camera right now. I'm like, he just fumbled his camera match, and I'm like, And he's like, these choices were like not that good. But then the big problem is I'm definitely not going to put in the time to win an 18-round tournament in Texas in order to get back to the Pro Tour. Like, that's like really the delta. I'm like, I could win an RCQ if I tried. That's the thing. And then like, I'll have like this giant amount of discontent in the middle of my model. I could spend that time doing anything else.
Yeah. How many, what place do you have to get in the RC to qualify for the PT?
Like top 32. Roman missed on tiebreakers last time.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you're going to have to 1-3 in RCQ 3 times so that you can 1-3 the RC if you have 1-3 at the RC, right?
Yeah, the thing is like annoying.
You don't even have 1-3 top 32s at LobsterCon. I'm just kidding. You're what are you? You're 2 of 3. So I
missed day 2 of the last 2 RCs I played in.
But if you scale up LobsterCon to the RC side, then it is top 8. So you're not 1-3 at
so
you're not 1-3. You're exactly 1-3 at LobsterCon top 8s. If you could possibly compare that to top 32 in the RC.
So Roman missed top 8 yesterday by 1 point. He went like, or maybe 2 points, like 4-2-1 or whatever at MagicCon. So with our blue-white deck, and like I was working with Patrick last week, and I'm like, I think you should play blue-white. It's the best. It beats. Like I think it's the best anti-cutter deck. It's the best anti-omniscience deck, and it's good against red. He's like, this would be like the biggest break of all time, and I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. It's just the best. I don't know. He's like, why don't people play it? I'm like, I don't know. They're stupid. And then like he tested. He goes, I went 3-3 with cutter, and I'm like, okay. He's just like, I probably could have played better, but I'm not going to put in the time. Like that was the
yeah. I mean, look, I'm not gonna think Patrick will be understanding, and also he doesn't listen to the Spike Colony podcast. But I don't really care what a fish thinks, and I don't also care what the fish tells the other fish.
He's a Hall of Famer.
Oh, you're talking about Chapin. Okay.
What did you think I meant?
I thought you meant Pog. I was like so confused.
Pog is not qualified for the Pro Tour.
I was gonna say, I was like, what? Preparing for what? An RCQ?
No.
All right. So
I was working on his Pro Tour deck with him.
Okay, this is what I have to say about your narrative, which I think is probably exactly in line with like the Zach Keeney, everything we talk about all the time. You're like talking about a blue-white deck. Was it the Omniscience deck? Is it anything like the? Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like it's just a blue-white control deck.
It's a control deck.
Yeah. This is like exactly a like only works if your opponent is bad at Magic deck.
That's just not true. There's just things they can't do about. I mean, I think that you lose a lot of value in an open decklist tournament, right? So like when you're playing an arena and your opponent goes first turn Meticulous Archive and bins an Omniscience, then you just play Soul Guide Lantern on turn 1. They lost a lot of
you're literally explaining why this is just an exploited.
That's never going to happen in an open decklist tournament, right? So, but I mean, but that doesn't mean the deck isn't good.
I'm not saying the deck isn't good. I'm just saying we had a very long discussion about how you have choices, right? So you can play the Rock, and you'll beat a lot of people that you play a lot of turns with. You can play blue-white control. You play a lot of people that you beat a lot of turns with, or you just play the best deck or play Tron, right? I don't know if Cutter is Tron. I don't know that much about the modern the contemporary standard metagame, but I know a few things. I know Omniscience is just Reanimator, which is fun, and
it's more consistent than Reanimator.
And then
it has a lot of blue cards.
and then Cutter is just like. I just read the card and I'm like, okay, so this is just like, I don't even know what you're supposed to do.
Why would they print it? Is that
yeah. I'm like reading I actually don't know why they would print it, right? Because like Monastery Mentored is like restricted in Vintage or whatever, and it's it's 3 mana and it's not an artifact, and it's like
3 mana it can trigger onto your opponent.
But my point is, I am confident that you are overconfident about the quality of your control deck because of the quality of your opponents.
So let's just do a mental exercise, okay? I've never seen a Pro Tour metagame this lopsided in my life. It's 42% Cutter, 20+% Omniscience, okay? And then like red is in third at like 10%. I've never seen this distribution before. Let's say I am so overvaluing my deck's efficacy and it's only 55% against all 3 decks. It's much better than that, right? I think it's the best anti-cutter deck and the best anti-omniscience deck. Isn't it irrational to play anything else at that lopsided of a distribution? Because the best you can do is 50% otherwise. 55, and I'm just claiming 55.
No, I mean this is ultimately the question of like, one, your assessment of your own ability, and 2, your assessment of other people's ability in relationship to your ability. So in bucket 1, there is a question of if cutter mirrors are 50%, and what
to be fair, cutter is like 3 different decks at this point.
Exactly, right?
Yeah,
so
that's fair.
So let's go ahead and say, let's just go ahead and say that.
I'll tell you what,
Dreadnought,
I'm gonna lay down on my sword on this, because I'm gonna have to get into a lot of temporary lockdown math if we're gonna go down this, and nobody's interested in how many 3 casting cost cards are in a format that they don't play. We're supposed to talk about Premodern.
No, I'm bringing this back into into the lens of Premodern, right? So let's just approach the Premodern metagame like this. Let's just say cutter is Dreadnought, right? And let's say Dreadnought is exactly like a non-inbred, because you can just do a bunch of stupid stuff in Premodern. You just like play 4 Brain Freeze in your sideboard, right? Nobody's gonna stop you. But let's just say the meta is balanced enough such that Dreadnought is the best deck, and you have Dreadnought mirrors, right? Yeah. So what are Dreadnought mirrors, and who wins them? Is it the person who wins the die roll, or is it the person who is better at Magic? What do you think?
Oh, wow, that's a complicated question. I think that I don't even know to what degree winning the die roll matters after game 1, because I don't know if people are leaving in days or not, how many days they play. Like, you only get value from going first if you play, I'm going to put this in air quotes, but please don't use this word literally, like an impatient game. You talk about this all the time. Like, I should have jammed on 2, but you didn't jam on 2 because you're a patient player, right? Like, you get a lot of equity going first if you're going to jam on 2 with a ton of free spells. But after that, it changes a lot. I think that, what you mean, mono blue on mono blue? Like, I think blue white has.
Mike, stay focused.
I don't know what the question is anymore.
I literally said, assume that everyone is playing the same Dreadnought list, and they're like, because we just
I think it's.
I'm gonna rewind, right? Because you said there's 3 different cutter decks, and I basically am asking, is variance going to decide, right, or is player skill going to decide? And I used being on the play. I probably misguided you, but I used being on the play as my thing for variance. But I completely agree. I think that if you play Dreadnought mirrors, more often than not, the more skilled player is going to win. So you would go to some conclusion if you just decided that Dreadnought was going to be some 30% of the metagame, and you were a skilled player, there was no point to be trying to play Grotog or do some nonsense to your Dreadnought deck, right? Because you would just capture all your equity in the mirror, and then you would, you'd be playing the strongest deck in the field. Now, I have a follow-up question. Let's say Elves is the best deck in the format, and everybody's playing the same.
100% on skill.
Elves list. You think is 100% on skill?
Yeah.
You think that you can beat me if my opening hand is 7 and it contains Priest of Titania and Survival of the Fittest, and your opening hand is 4. In the long run, skill is always going to come out.
Oh, you
right?
mean in an individual game?
No, it just doesn't, like, I'm talking about in an individual Pro Tour, right? So you can't influence, like, basically, I'm saying this, right? So in the long run, right, if you play 100 matches of Dreadnought, you could say that if it's a high skill matchup, if 90% of those 100 matchups, the higher skilled player wins. I would argue that, and I've played Elves Mirrors, I would argue that if you played 100 Elves Mirrors, even if you were the better Elves player, you might only win 65% of the time. Because the other half of the time, or the other 35% of the time, your opponent is either half the time your opponent's going to be on the play, right? So if they're on the play, they have a Priest of Titania that can tap for mana before you do. And you'll just lose every game because they will have a 15 mana advantage on you, and that 15 mana advantage converts immediately into either just a straight up win or a way to make it impossible for you to win. So
I think like there's like a lot of factors, but like if you're playing your deck and I'm just playing,
no, Mike, focus. Everyone's playing the same deck.
But what is the deck? Your deck has one priest.
No, the deck is stock Elves. The deck is Lanny Elves is going to be stock in the future, and then regardless, in the Lanny Elves mirror, it's still going to be whoever draws their cradles, survivals, and their if they board up to 3 Masticore.
I think that if it's Lanny Elves in the future, it will be much more luck dependent than it is now.
I think that stock Elves is much more luck dependent. Like, if you have an opening hand that doesn't have Priest of Titania, you're just going to lose to your opponent's Priest of Titania, or you can't play Elves.
So I think, like, there's certain things that, like, I think maybe the average Spike Conlani listener knows, but the average player who maybe doesn't necessarily know, but, like, that Priest of Titania and multiple Priest of Titania is more important even than anger in the Elves mirror. Like, there's stuff like that. Like, if you just know this thing and then you can play according to this guideline, you're going to have a lot of advantage. I would equate that with skill.
I don't equate knowing the text of the card Priest of Titania to be skill if you're sleeving a... No, it's not a strat. It's you literally play this card and you tap it and you go, huh. It says add 1 green mana for every elf on the battlefield. And then you like look at your battlefield and it's got 3 elves, and you look at your opponent's battlefield and it's got 2 elves. And then you look at the survival of the fittest in your hand and you're like, what am I going to do with this? And you're like, okay, I'm going to get a Career Ranger first. And then I'm going to untap my Priest of Titania. And then I'm going to get a Symbiote.
Influence is what cards you get with survival, stuff like that.
No, you're saying that you would win every match against an opponent that like doesn't know doesn't know to make a bunch of mana and win the game.
Advantage though.
Like you need to at least understand, like, this is what I'm saying. I was like, I think that one, you like underestimate your opponents, maybe because you watch coverage and you're just like, oh my God, there's like donkeys on coverage or whatever. But like the fact of the matter is, if for whatever reason, Elves became like this deck that 30% of the metagame is playing, like I would have a baseline assumption that it would also just like be a Raska Bible situation, right? So like the reason why I find Mono Blue Dreadnought to be, you know, so prolific and successful is in part because there's just a guide and it explains you stuff in the deck. And don't get me wrong, I still have I see people come in and they ask questions. I'm like, these are just answered by the guide, or these are just something that you're going to get like a few reps in. But like the fact of the matter is, sure, if you're Bob and your opponent is like doesn't even know how their cards work, of course you're going to win the Elves mirror 100% of the time. But I'm saying that like I could beat Bob in the Elves mirror like half the time.
So I think like Elves is very different from a Raska deck because the kind of explosive that it is ends the game, whereas the Raska Bible is about extending the game and winning in the kinds of games that you think I like and that you hate, right? Like literally, like I'm gonna vision charm.
Right, I'm stopping you right there. This is not the point. This is not the point. My point is, you're gonna go over to John's house tonight, and you have to play a mirror. All right, and John is way better than you, and he knows what and you have to play 100 matches of a mirror. What deck are you going to hand John and yourself that is going to give you the most likelihood of beating John?
I'd have to play 100 games.
You have to play 100 matches.
So the problem is, like, I would choose standard blue-white. I would win the first 3
No. It's a pre-modern deck for the sake of argument.
I would lose the next 97.
Okay, so then let me reframe the question. Yeah. You have to win at least 45 matches or somebody will shoot you in the head. What deck are you handing both you and John Finkel?
I guess red deck.
And do you think that you're going to make it out alive?
No, there's no. Here's the problem with your hypothetical. Like when I was qualified for the RC last year, like I was pretty convinced I was like maybe one of the best standard blue-white players, and like for specifically playing mirror matches in the world, right? Like my win rate was insane. But the problem is, if you play against John Finkel, I'll just beat him 3 times, and then I'll never beat him again. Right? Like that's the problem.
All right.
Like,
So you're going to do 100 matches. You're going to do 100 matches versus John. You're going to do them sequentially. So first up, you're going to play 100 Dreadnought Mirrors. How many are you going to win?
100 sequential. I don't know. 17.
Okay. Next up, you're going to play 100 Premodern Elves Mirrors. Like stock, whatever you have in your deck box right now.
Oh, interesting.
Do you think it'll be more or less than 17?
More than 17.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll win like 25.
Because you'll win the die roll half the time, right? And then when you win the die roll half the time, you will also win the die roll and have Priest of Titania half the time, or Gaia's Cradle half the time, or Survival.
You're underrating how much better John Finkel is than everybody else.
I understand, but the point is not how much better one player is to another. The point is how a person's skill interacts with their deck choice. This is like I'm using this conversation not to discuss how good John Finkel is or how good you are or whatever. I'm just trying to discuss the nature of decks, right? Like the Reanimator deck is going to like win more matches on the play, just a simple thing.
Reanimator
right?
is a good one. I might win like 40.
Yeah, there you go. This is exactly.
I probably won't, but I might win 40.
This is exactly my point. Let's
like the donkier the deck. That's like the more. That's what, like if I'm playing red deck, I might win 55.
That's what I'm saying, Mike.
That's why I choose red deck. Like
exactly.
I don't think John has much of a skill edge against me.
Okay, well let's pare that back down. Like maybe. Well, actually, that's actually fine, right? Because this is like a perfect example. Because I've always said this, right? We've had a habitual habit on this podcast of trying to emphasize or trying to place where the skill ceiling is on the burn deck. Because you always frame it of like, okay, well, I'm the burn master. I am playing at, 99.9% efficiency and accuracy on burn. And as a result, I'm going to win a lot of these matches, right? And then you're kind of turning around and you're saying like, okay, well, if you give John the burn deck, he'll also perform at 96%,
but
right?
The ceiling on burn is so much lower than the ceiling.
Exactly. It's much lower. It's much lower.
Like I could be like only like 25% as good as John, and I'm still at the 99th percentile on the ceiling of the burn.
There you go. And that's
so like there's like 75% that you can't utilize.
So if you go into a tournament and burn is well positioned in the metagame, burn is the cutter deck, right? And you go in the tournament and you're like, I have to win this tournament or somebody will shoot me in the face and I'll die. Then you're not going to pick some kind of like anti-burn deck. Like you're just going to pick burn because you'll win burn mirrors against John and Bob. And then burn's just the best deck in the format. So you'll like win a bunch of other stuff. Like, this is assuming that, obviously if we put this into a simulation, maybe you just like die most of the time and then you actually.
I would definitely die most of the time.
No. Let me finish.
John Finkel.
You might die most of the time, but like you should play this like third deck to maximize your chances of living because of like whatever. But so we have to be a little bit more frank and be like, you're going to run this. You have to maximize your win rate, right? That's the goal. So, all that is to say, you have this third deck. You have this blue-white control deck. Nobody plays it, right? And you're like, Chapin, you got to play this deck instead of Cutter. Chapin's like, I don't know, Mike.
No, he's playing the rock. He just loves the rock.
Oh, okay.
So like he's playing like a black-green deck with a bunch of new cards in it.
And Dark Confidant and Liliana the Veil.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Shieldred. He's just playing the rock, and he's like, "Here's my deck," and I'm like, "Okay, make these changes." And
he chose like the fourth thing, which is basically the same thing as playing blue-white control, and also like whatever. But I mean, we just talk about this on the podcast endlessly, right? Just like what's like the characteristics of what is a redo deck, like a deck that actually it isn't bloodthirsty.
To be fair, Chapin won a Pro Tour with the rock, right? Like. In the relatively modern era in 2014.
Do you think that Chapin had tremendous skill edge over the field? Do you think he had average skill in the field? Like,
well, he's one of the 20 best players of all time, right? He's one of the 10 best deck designers of all time. But like the main things were, and we were working on top level podcasts and so forth, like around that era, and he had enormous deck edge because it was one of the reasons why he recruited me onto Ultra Pro was because I worked on like the Dragons deck right after this. He's just like, no one collaborated with me on this deck, and like it had all of these things that were different than what everybody else wanted to do, and he had like no sounding board on his team, and he was clearly right. That was the thing. Right?
So I have a question for you. Do you think that given the changes in how the game is designed from 2014 to 2025, that Chapin is still able to capture some kind of edge playing an open deck list rock deck that he was able to in 2014?
I think that the possibility exists specifically on the Pro Tour. Because the decks right now, even though there's been arena matches and stuff, the decks aren't fully baked. There won't be 3 versions of Cutter in 2 weeks.
Right.
Like
well, so the one caveat is there's a brand new set introduced to the format. So that's like where we're getting back to the old thing, style Pro Tour.
Like, I'm always going back and I'm like, look, I've been traveling like the last 2 weeks. I don't have a strong opinion on Final Fantasy, but I know I play a lot of Standard before this, and I think Blue White's the best. Like that was the Commerce way, but I kept asterisking it. I'm like, I haven't played a single game with Final Fantasy. But like, if you think these are the deck matchups, this deck is really quite good. And so, that's where I was coming from. But he just has biases. He's playing one Pro Tour a year or less, and he just wants to play his rock deck.
That's fine.
Where he's coming from.
That's fine. I want to get away from that, which is like the point that I'm making, right? Is that unless you are playing specifically against Pro Tour level talent, then you're testing data, like your impressions of your deck, whether you're aware of them or not. You can be completely aware, right? Like I play a bunch of Premodern games, right? And I play them. It's actually funny. I just play them at different levels, right? So I play like local 1Ks, I play the online league, and then the online league goes to a top 8 cut or top 16 cut. And then I also just play casual games, and I also play meetup, right? And at all those levels, I'm like basically aware of the mistakes my opponents are making. Sometimes it's like super obvious, right? They just misclick on Magic Online, and I'm like, okay, like people misclick less in more intense online tournaments as like the stakes get higher, right? So there's less misclicks in the online finals as there is in a casual game. But even though I'm sort of acutely aware that my opponents are like not going to be the same level of difficulty as LobsterCon, I still end up with these like wild ideas in my head that Grotog is a playable deck because I just win so much with it, right? And so I just like go in and I'm like, oh, I've never lost to Blue White Dreadnought. I've never lost to Elves. I've never lost to Goblins. I've never lost to Enchantress. Like I just beat all of these decks, and I beat them soundly. I beat that, like I'm like, oh, I've played it 3 times. I've played, whatever. And I'm like, the only thing I don't beat is like Red, Green, Oath, and Burn, right? And I'm like, this is like a great deck. But the one time where I'm playing against like even just like slightly more difficult competition, I can blame it on variance, right? But I lost to Blue White Dreadnought against Mike Harris, and I lost to Goblins against James Smits. And like it's possible that I would have won those games if we replayed them 3 more times, but I think a more realistic approach to myself would be like, oh, I'm really high on this Grotog deck, but I'm also high on it because a lot of my data is just bad data. It's just like I've just been beating people who are just
playing against randoms on Arena. Like you can't. There's no real like preparation outside of like going to a house and playing with the best.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's an illusion, right? So, I just look back. It's like I actually said that to Patrick. I'm like, look, this is the level of competition I'm playing against. For reference, I told him about the time when you were making fun of me, and I'm just like, and you were just like,
yeah, because you play leagues.
So you're just like, at least play Mythic, right? So then it took me 1 hour to get to Mythic, like playing my red deck for the RC, and then I had a 90+% win rate in Mythic. So I thought I was just like, all right, I'm going to crush the RC. And I went to the RC and I went like 5-4 or something. Right? You know, like it was just, you know, I got.
Yeah, but Mythic is more difficult than Leagues, at least,
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
it's the most difficult that you can get on Arena.
I can play, right? Without, you know, and that was the one where I was depressed because I didn't do well. And Sam roped me into playing in the PTQ the next day.
Right, and they beat you the next day.
Fucking farmed me.
Yeah.
Right? But yeah, but I was just like, you know, he asked me, he's like, were their decks any better than the decks you played against on Arena? No, I just lost a bunch of die rolls. Problem is, you lose a bunch of die rolls against players who are as good as you. It's going to be a lot different than
I mean, of course,
die rolls against people who aren't as good as you.
Of course, I mean, it's whether it's by mechanics or by player skill. You know, Magic definitely seems to have flattened out, and I think that we're experiencing kind of a weird thing in Premodern where, like, you know. Like Premodern's flattening out too. Like people have less edge with like kooky stuff in their deck. There's still way more like ways that you can surprise your opponent. And you know, granted, people are just like less sharp. They're like less good at ranging you,
so
right?
I'll just heartily agree with you, right? So the information edge in Premodern has changed so much, probably as a result of it getting bigger, and you know, people are creating content, you know, people like Fran and other streamers, yourself, and you know, certain podcasts. But I'll go back and think about certain things, which is like, you know, 3 years ago there was an episode of Mano's podcast where he had Ale on, and they were talking about the Elves versus Red deck matchup, and people generally think about that as being a pretty bad matchup for Elves, right? And Ollie had won this match against Red, and he's just like, look, I listened to the Mano podcast. Mike Flores was on it. He said, if you want to beat Red, this is the sequence you have to do on Elves. It's not like a great sequence, but if you do it, you might win, you know? And Ollie ran it in real life. But you think of Ollie as being the best Elves player. Like even something like that, like that's something that if you just listen to a podcast, you know how to operate this matchup, which was just mysterious 3-4 years ago. You know, so I don't know. Like, I think there's a lot of things like it's not intuitive if you're playing Stasis and you're playing against Reanimator necessarily that you actually have to have an answer to Putrid Imp or you won't win, right? Like, you're probably going to draw more cards than they do because you have Gush and Impulse. They can just keep their hand under with Putrid Imp, right? You can't bounce them with Chain of Vapor too many times or they'll bounce you back. Like, you know, it's just stuff like that. Like somebody has to tell you. But once they do, then the information curve is much flatter than it was 5 minutes earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's also just moments like that where, you know, one of the things, it's just like a small thing. And I don't even remember like the exact moment, but I think there was like a moment where my opponent, you know, was just surprised that I like put a Thornscape Battle Mage into play, right? So like I like shot their thing with 2 toughness. Like I don't know what the thing was. It was they needed it, right? And I was just like, oh no, how am I going to deal with this? And then I was like survivaling, and I was like, oh yeah, I just have Battle Mage. Like I'm just going to Battle Mage this. And now people know about Battle Mage, and now
you have a planes in your deck. You don't have a planes in your deck.
I don't. So I'm going back and forth. So
I think
basically
I'm put planes in your deck.
So I have like 100 ways to build the deck right now. So if you've been following along, I cut all the untappers from Elves. My current list leans heavily into red so that I can play 3 Mog Fanatic in the sideboard. And the Mog Fanatic in the sideboard was excellent against Burn and Goblins. It did exactly what I needed it to, but I felt like a little bit of tension there. And I've been sort of trying to still rebalance the deck. I'm considering cutting red from the deck again and then just playing more Masticores.
Would you even have anger?
I wouldn't have. Well, if I cut red, I'd cut anger. Like
So-
I wouldn't play. So I guess I'll put it this way: I would consider playing my deck without Mog Fanatic, with anger, with lots of Masticore. But just to remind the audience what my deck is, I cut Multani's Acolyte. I cut 3 of each Q Ranger and Symbiote. And I cut 3 Priest of Titania. And the reasons are like basically I just wanted to make the Elves deck a little sturdier, and just playing a bunch of 1/1s for 1 or 2/1s for 4.
Your end game is just Sky Shroud Poacher, right?
Like, no, the end game is this. The end game is actually the same as it has always been, which is just put 12 scroll tokens into play, and then your opponent loses. Like Sky Shroud Poacher is in a escape shoot to like the sequence. I have Sky Shroud Poacher specifically, and this actually happened, was play turn 1 Elf. Turn 2, I play Survival of the Fittest. I go to my opponent's end step. I activate Survival of the Fittest. It resolves, I get Sky Shroud Poacher, and then they cast Disenchant targeting Survival. The sequence actually happened. They just disenchanted right away. A reminder to our audience, let your opponent activate the Survival, resolve the Survival activation, and if they accidentally get Squee, then you disenchant the Survival, and they have Squee in their hand. My opponent just disenchanted right away, but it didn't matter. I was going to play around disenchant no matter what. So I got Poacher, and they just didn't have Swords of Plowshares, and then Poacher ran away with the game, right? I was playing against Terrageddon, so it almost didn't matter what I did, but it is worth noting.
Your deck is great against Terrageddon, you're saying?
My deck is... Elves is nearly unstoppable against Terrageddon. Lanny Elves is like completely unstoppable against Terrageddon because I just have so much more value added.
A stupid comment about that. Maybe I was watching a top 8 match at the first Sacred Torch, which I believe was won by Terrageddon.
The first Sacred Torch was won by Fulling your Spectress, yeah.
Yeah, but he beat
Terrageddon was in the finals, yeah.
And he beat 2 Elves decks in the top 8, I think, because he Armageddoned their mountain away. Right.
Well, I've got a second mountain in the sideboard, but also he also had Cataclysm. But I would just...
I have lost to Terrageddon with Elves in key matchups more than once, and it's as a result of Cataclysm specifically. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm basically, going to be of the stance that it's just going to happen a lot. Like, those kinds of lines are a lot less scary. They do have if they can still do like Terravor into Armageddon, or they get like a key Pyroclasm off, right? But like Dress Crew Data experience, like Elves has just been super ahead of Terrageddon since then. I'm not saying Terrageddon has nothing, but also now my deck has so much more interaction for their stuff, and so much
saying I've lost to Terrageddon.
Yeah. So much value, but regardless, I've built this Elves deck because I was like, okay, Elves is pretty good against Dreadnought. I don't think it's actually great against Dreadnought. I think it's like good after sideboarding, but in game 1, this is actually an information thing. I had mentioned it last week, but we had a conversation. We were like, oh, if you know your opponent's on Elves and you're on Dreadnought, should you just mull to combo, like mull to cantrip plus half the combo?
Mull to turn 2, right?
Right. Or turn 3 if you're on the play.
So the problem is, I was actually going to make a comment about this because I like the Thornscape Battle Mage technology very much, and I was just like, I played 1 Thornscape Battle Mage at Grand Prix Levine, and I played 3 Naturalize in my main deck, and I think I'm going to add a Plains and replace some of the Naturalize with more Thornscape Battle Mage. You played, I believe, 2 Thornscape Battle Mage and anything else. But like, you can't just mulligan to turn 2 combo against a deck that has 3 Naturalize in the main deck or Thornscape Battle Mage.
You can't do it if they have the main deck Naturalize, but also it doesn't get better for you over time, right? So if you don't win on turn 2, then they have Survival, and then Survival means they have multiple. Like, Survival's just going to draw all of their hate, and it's going to just draw Deranged, which can just block and kill Dreadnought, right? So you don't actually have options besides winning quickly with Dreadnought versus Elves.
Do you think that changes after sideboarding? Or do you think it gets worse?
There's nothing you can do. You can annul Survival of the Fittest if you want, but you still have to make a move. On the flip side, right, all you have to do is put a Dreadnought onto the table on turn 2 or turn 3, and then have one of Stifle, Foil, or Counterspell to kind of handle the one thing that they're going to do.
I lost to Ritz playing Mono Blue Dreadnought in the top 8 of Grand Prix Levine. I was sure I had it. I think I drew 3 Naturalize in game 1, and he just played super slow and waited until he had 1,000 counterspells, and that's how he beat me. So,
but you didn't have survival, right?
I had survival. I actually got my Thornscape Battle Mage and my Nantuko, and he just waited until he could counter everything. And so like the composition of I think I probably just didn't have a lot of mana.
Yeah, you kind of
Yeah. So like if you have that many naturalizes and a survival, you should just be able to bowl everybody over. But I think I just didn't have a lot of land.
Yeah, I think the average experience of Elves versus Dreadnought is if the Dreadnought sits back and tries to accrue resources, you're just gonna like put more power, mana, and like stuff on the battle. Like remember, again, I find it hard to believe that Elves with active survival wouldn't be able to scale their mana to the point that they can play multiple interactive spells or just put 12 toughness on the battlefield.
I had to fight early over a powder keg, which is actually, I think, in my recollection now, right? Like, so I utilized one of my Nantukos, because I only have one Nantuko, right? Like, to fight the powder keg. And so I went, then thinking back, I'm like, if I had let him have the powder keg, it probably would have just devastated me in a different way. But I was I lost to Dreadnought, which is a thing people do in this format.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. But I think
so many counter spells.
I think that, our listeners can go out and try it. I think that most Dreadnought players are not going to enjoy what happens if they sit back and try to cast all their cantrips against Elves. I think that you'll be facing a lot of pressure that scales upwards, and at some point you might cast Dreadnought and you'll be at 10 life and you'll be looking at 5 power and attackers, and what are you gonna do?
So, Lanny, what do we have this week? We have a meetup and league this week. One meetup and league.
Yeah, so it's going to be Office, then it's going to be League, then it's going to be Bearded Dragon on Sunday.
There's no Brooklyn this month?
No, I'm going to be out of town, and
Okay, so we have a meetup and league this week, and then this is the last league before the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
So I was planning to play Elves. But I was planning to play Elves in the playoff.
Well, you can't say that because now people are just going to play anti-Elves, and then
here's my thought: Rich is definitely going to play Stasis, right? There's no way he's not playing Stasis, and Lan is playing all these goofball freaking green creature decks.
All right, let's talk about. Those are
two people who are locked for.
Let's talk about Lan's range. Lan could play Replenish. He could play Devourer combo. He could play
Stompy.
He's not going to play Stompy. Well, maybe he'll play Stompy in the top 8 because he has no interest in winning it.
Very proud of his Stompy performance.
He has no interest in winning the top 8, so that might lead him to play Stompy. But I wouldn't play Elves in this. Unfortunately, you give up points versus Stasis by not having 4 Q Rangers.
So I would put money on Steven playing Mono Blue Dreadnought right now. He played it last week. He obviously cares.
Oh, yeah. Well, I hope you have a next level meta plan, because, again, I wouldn't talk out loud about what you're going to do for, the top 8 finale of the league.
Those are 4 of the players who are locked for top 8. That's the thing. This is a metagame within a metagame.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just hope that you don't think out loud too much to make yourself too predictable, because obviously they're not going to tell you what they're thinking.
I could play Dance Academy. Who knows? I don't know.
All right. Well, you'll probably end up just playing Burn. Let's face it. So we don't have to talk too much about that. But I wanted to close the loop on.
There's no way I'm playing Burn if I think Steven's playing 12.
I wanted to close. I thought you like your Burn versus 12-12 matchup. You're so ready for it.
I don't like my Burn versus 12-12 matchup times my me versus SWB matchup. There's an overlap there that if it's just a room full of donkeys, I'll take some freaking 12-12 matches. I won every 12-12 match I played at LobsterCon last year in both days. But you're talking about SWB, dude. He's not gonna give me back however many points these other people
All right.
did.
So about the planes, I played the red splash and white splash in Elves. I think it's totally reasonable. I think Thornscape is pretty good, and I think enabling it is good. On the other hand, I think that if we played with this a little bit more, you could be mono green. You could play Raphaelos, which is better than Priest if you're going to move away from playing a bunch of Q Ranger, right? And then Raphaelos can enable you to...
And I just want to play a nonsense mono green deck now. I'll just play... Tell you what, I'm playing nonsense mono green deck on Tuesday.
You can play you can play tons of Masticore. Like, so Raphaelos in the less untapper version is exciting if you have lots of forest, obviously. But because it's self-contained, right? So Priest needs to bring its friends. Raphaelos is self-contained. That means the likelihood that you can go Raphaelos into Deranged Hermit or Raphaelos into Masticore is much higher than your likelihood that you can go Priest into those things because, like I said, Priest needs to bring a friend.
Yeah.
So I think that Raphaelos is interesting there. I think you don't have to play Sylvan Library, famous last words. I think Sylvan Library is excellent. And I really wanted... Like my entire thesis was like, this deck is half mana and half spells. And so, or it's actually more than half mana. It's like 40 mana and 20 things. So like you kind of need Sylvan Library to make sure you stop drawing mana and start drawing things when you need to. But if you do replace Sylvan Library for more things, maybe that solves the problem. And you should just have that balance like that. A lot of stuff has been considered for this. Histrodon has been pitched.
Histrodon.
Moving
the green Ophidian that costs at least twice as much mana.
Yes.
Man,
it can cost 5. This was pitched to me. But I actually don't hate it just because
I love that. I wanted that card to be good. So
everyone wants the card to be good. Everybody loves Histrodon.
Everyone's been good.
My thing is that you just need a lot of things to do with 3 mana on turn 2. Like that's the goal. If you have 3 mana on turn 2, you just want to ship it. So you want Survival of the Fittest.
Remove Tangle Wire from your deck.
Well, so Tangle Wire is great at 3 mana on turn 2, except for when you're on the play, right? So you're on the play, you tap 1 land, right?
It's like, I'm so far ahead. This card puts me behind.
Yeah. Or sometimes your opponents can like play through the Tangle Wire if they're like a combo deck, or your opponent also has permanents, so they can stay at parity against the Tangle Wire. So for instance, Tangle Wire against Devourer is like not very good because they'll just be like turn 1 altar and then tap the altar, right? And then turn 2 they'll play Mind Stone and Chromatic Sphere, and then all of a sudden they have more permanents than you.
Man,
so
am I gonna play the Rock?
So
I'm playing the Rock now.
So I think that Tangle Wire is a little bit too weak for.
I hate Tangle Wire
for what you can do, but I am interested in what Elves looks like if it's mono green. I have a YouTube video where I'm playing Red Splash and White Splash. I think Swords of Plowshares is just awesome, and it's totally reasonable to have in Elves.
Oh my God.
And then
how many white sources do you have in that version?
I have just the Plains and the Birds of Paradise, and Birchlaw Rangers. I think I cut Birchlaw Rangers in the future though.
Oh, but if we have 1 Crows and Tusker, that's like adding another 12 white sources.
Absolutely. You're getting what I'm putting down.
I'm survivaling for at least 4 mana to accomplish a basic Plains.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much to say about that besides the fact that like I think we can do an entire separate episode on mana-based design, right? So the question of whether or not you have to Swords to Plowshares in a hurry depends on what your Swords to Plowsharesing, right? So if it's Goblin Lackey, it's actually not that big of a deal if your options are, I have Windswept Teeth in my opening hand, so I'll plow the Lackey, or I'll play a 1/1, right? It's not so much that you would add City of Brass to your deck. Maybe you would add Brushland, and so on and so forth down the line, right? So a lot of the Plowshares targets that you can't deal with via Battle Mage or Masticore are like Exalted Angel, opposing Masticore, Psychotog, right? And so those are all later down in the curve, and
you have time to draw it, and
exactly.
You also have to kill that creature you're going to lose. Well, I think Goblin Lackey or Jackal Pup or even Ball Lightning are interesting to think about because having a Swords to Plowshares under pressure against those so early in the game isn't even that good because it sets you back developmentally, and B, let's be honest, you're probably going to lose anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
but like the ability to interact with a Masticore or a Psychic Dog is actually something that buys you a lot of equity.
Right. And I kind of like it for that, but then I also, zoomed back out and I was just kind of like, okay, but if I'm playing this version of the deck, I have the option to race with anger, right? So it's like if they're going to kill me slowly with, and like Masticore is the one scary thing, but they also have to have Masticore and mana, right? You can beat a Masticore by just making more guys than they like. It takes 10 mana for a Masticore to take down a Deranged Tournament, right?
I love Masticore so much. I mean, like, I went all in on Masticore at Grand Prix Levine, and I just attacked with it 5 times. It like could have died at any point, like I'm just discarding my cards, but he got there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Masticore is so good that we have somebody in the Elves Cabal testing 3 Masticore in their main deck, and so far it's gone pretty well for them. 4 Masticore. So yeah,
4 Masticore.
Ireland King won the Elves infested playoff of the most recent online league, playing 4 Masticore main deck in his Elves deck. And this is just like untapper Elves, and it just has 4 Masticore. It also has a Kamal, but 4 deranged. I guess I'll start listing things. Okay. In order of things I'm confident in that I've learned about Elves. Thing I am most confident in is that every copy of Deranged Hermit is good. All 4 of them is good. And the Sky Shroud Poacher is pretty good. And then the only question is if after you have 4 Deranged and a Sky Shroud Poacher is if you want the 6th Deranged, which is Kamal. Like, you can argue for Kamal in that. The second thing I'm confident in is probably Thornscape Battle Mage. The third thing I'm confident in.
There's no Thornscape Battle Mage in this version, I see.
Well, you've got 4 Masticore, so I guess that's how you justify it, right? But I think Thornscape Battle Mage is like pretty great because it's just so even.
I would play a freaking Plains. That's pretty good.
The third thing is like, now we're in medium confident. The third thing I'm confident in is cutting all the untappers and priests. Like, I think that so far I am extremely encouraged by the fact that I cut a bunch of the untappers and the priests, and whenever I had survival, I was still able to like win 2 turns later.
If you cut all the just untappers or whatever. I do think that Wirewood Symbiote gives you a really powerful line with a number of the cards, but if you cut all the priests, even if you got down to 1 priest, like I believe you've done in Lanny Elves, you're at a tremendous disadvantage in the mirror now.
No, I mean, that's absolutely true, right? I have no argument against that, and like the only way for you to address that problem is to have some answer to opposing Priest of Titania.
Having 4 Masticore.
Yeah. 4 Masticore is too slow, right? Because how are you going to get to 6 mana if you can't play Elves? Like, if your opponent's playing priests and untappers, like, you're never going to have enough mana to Masticore. But granted,
you need like Arc Lightning. That's your catch-up mechanic.
Yeah, right. So I mean, I guess I'll tell the story of this match, right? So I'm playing mono green Elves against untapper Elves, right? And I was just playing a mono green version that just was trying a few different things. Sees what happens if I cut the mountain, right? Cut the red sources. And so in game 1, I have my 1 of Priest of Titania, and I have survival, right? So in game 1, I'm on the play. I have Priest and survival. So the turn I untap with Priest, I'm able to make 20 mana with survival and put a Masticore in play and win the game. The second game, I get run over by their survival and priest. The third game, I mulligan to 5, and my hand is like crop rotation, a couple dorks, a Masticore, and a forest or whatever.
How has crop rotation been for you? I saw you had extra copies in your sideboard.
So I'll finish the story. So basically, I put Masticore into play on like turn 3-ish. They didn't have like a priest start or whatever, and Masticore was able to take over the game. So priest is super important. Being on the play is super important. So if you cut priest from your deck, you're worse in the mirror. So be it. Crop rotation, I think, is really awesome if you are in a hurry. Like, you can, like, obviously if you Deranged Hermit and you have an extra mana left over, like Crop Rotation lets you make even more mana, pick up your Deranged Hermit, play it again. It just makes you, you know, Gaia's Cradle makes the Elves deck like 2 turns faster. So Crop Rotation being the 5th copy of Gaia's Cradle is really excellent.
Or up to the 7th copy in your sideboard, right?
And then the sideboard idea was that I was going to board in Biorhythms and Crop Rotations, and against combo, I was just going to jam Biorhythm. So that's why I'm like so excited by Elves, because I have this mono green idea. I have this splash white, splash red idea. I have the one for my forthcoming video, which is just green splashing red with Mog Fanatic in the sideboard. And I have a third thing, which is just like, okay, why don't we just play lots of Biorhythm main deck if we're going to play Untappers and Priests? Like, if we're going to make 1,000 mana every game, then we might as well just like win the game on the spot with Biorhythms. Like, why are we bothering with Hunting Pack? Let's just cast Biorhythm. Like,
I think Hunting Pack is poop. So
just imagine this, right? We try to fix the Goblins matchup by playing lots of Call of the Herd in the main deck. And
I like that strategy.
And we try to fix the combo matchup by playing lots of Biorhythm in the main deck. And we're already good against mid-range and control because we're a Survival of the Fittest deck that just generates infinite value. So I'm just like, I feel like we can find an Elves deck that can start with a little bit of all the good stuff main deck and then just board it in more sideboard, because the thing that I have realized about pre-modern Magic the Gathering, or perhaps Magic the Gathering in general, is losing game 1 100% of the time is really, really bad. And Elves losing game 1 100% of the time to like Goblins and Burn was just like,
it doesn't lose 100% of the time to Burn.
It doesn't lose 100% of the time to Goblins and Burn, but you have to be on the play. You have to play. You have to be on the play. You have to have survival, and you probably have to have like in more 1/1s than they have efficient damage and Cradle, right?
I'm sure I've told this story on the podcast, but when I was testing for the first Sacred Torch with Lan, we had a playtest game where I was playing Natural Order Elves, and I resolved Natural Order for Verdant Force into Natural Order for Phantom Nishoba by the 4th turn with Anger in the graveyard, and I still lost the game. And I was just like, this is the definition of unwinnable.
Yeah, I mean, you have to Natural Order for a green creature that kills Goblin Sharpshooter.
Like, just having 2 7/7 hasters, one of which had lifelink and the other one was spitting out like a sapperling every turn.
Well, spitting out a nothing because Goblin Sharpshooter. Yeah.
Right. So, but the thing was, like, the Sharpshooter just kept getting an extra untap and like just taking off of the Nishoba. And it doesn't matter if I'm at like 60. Once all the creatures are dead, he's just gonna, you know.
Yeah. Sharpshooter is a problem, and I don't think. I mean, maybe our listeners will know. I don't think there's anything that you can Natural Order for to beat a Goblin Sharpshooter.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at these top 3 decks.
Can you Natural Order for a Spider Silk Armor?
No. Maybe you can Natural Order for something that, I mean, an Elvish champion, but they just use a Mog Fanatic to kill the champion, and it's all over anyway.
Exactly. Or if anything dies, right? If any one thing dies ever, right? But I also mentioned that in second place in the online league was a friend of the podcast, Ty Thomason, playing Phantom Nantuko, which is the 4th thing that you can do if you're going to play a bunch of untappers, is just like put a bunch of Phantom Nantukos on the battlefield. And that's good against Pyroclasm, good against Pyrokinesis, good against Goblins. Like, actually pretty interesting.
Is a rare. I don't even know this. I just heard you talk about it in the Land podcast last week. This card is like, it just doesn't seem good enough to me.
It gets 2 +1/+1 counters a turn with an untapper, or no, it gets 3 +1/+1 counters a turn with an untapper, and it gets 6 +1/+1 counters a turn with 2 untappers.
Oh, Trample's good, I guess.
The thing's like a 10/10 and 2 turns if you just have like a Wirewood Symbiote.
Okay. I'm not going to try it, but it is novel to me that somebody did. The Elves deck cost $7,000.
Yeah, the Cradles are $1,200 each, so on Card Kingdom. But that's another thing that would be interesting to try, like playing 2 biorhythm main so that you don't lose every game 1 to combo, and then playing lots of Call of the Herd main so that your hope against goblins is slightly better.
I feel like you'll get equity back against combo, but just by being faster.
You have decent equity against combo by just winning on turn 4, but I think biorhythm is better than Tangle Wire, you know? Because like biorhythm hits Devour and Replenish. It also hits control decks. It hits random, Dreadnought decks.
I liked about your deck, because when I played against Andy with Elves, I knew that he had like Wraths and Plows and stuff where he's playing 23 and me. My strategy was just to resolve Survival of the Fittest and get Anger, and then I just kept casting Call of the Herd.
Yeah.
It's just like, then like Call of the Herd is so profoundly different as a Magic card against a deck that has removal spells if it has haste. Like it's just a completely, I don't know. Like I think I just think about things visually a lot of the time, and it's just like, it's I don't know if people listening to this are just like, if it has haste, it's just so different. Like it's impossible to deal with in the long term.
Yeah.
I guess there is no long term because it kills you really fast.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's also kind of an interesting thing because there's always a debate about which matchups you would side out Anger and Elves. And then also if you're going to go to mono green, if it's worth it to play Anger at all, which is of course what Mango is doing. And I think that it's interesting because it's not black or white, right? It's not like you never need the tempo generated by having your squad have haste, and it's not like you never need to have 2 better cards in your deck or 3 better cards in your deck over Mountain, Anger, and you have a Migranger. Like all this stuff exists like somewhere in the medium where it's like, sure, if I'm playing Elves against some mid-range deck, I probably don't need haste because if I win, I'm just winning by burying them with value. But the question is like, if your plan is to bury them with value, it's like, can you plan to bury every deck with value? Like, and you're only really racing against.
I mean, if you have unchecked Survival of the Fittest, then you can beat anybody with value.
Right, exactly.
That's rule 1. Right.
But so it's like which ones do you need to beat with speed? And then that question is like becomes like a little weird and open ended. It's like, okay, well, sure, I'd like to be a turn faster against combo decks, right? I'd like to be a turn faster against. Well, I think I'd like to be a turn faster against Dreadnought, but also I could just block, right? If I have survival and I can make all these guys, or I can just get my tabbies or whatever.
But how do you? I mean, I think like you side in Gaia's Blessing against Devourer, and like that's a deck that you get a little bit of a bonus on, but then you can't do it twice. So if they beat you in game 1, then you just can't do it twice.
Yeah, exactly. The other idea, I mean, they might happen to just have Fling anyways in game 2. So you're like, oh, I boarded in these guys' blessings. They're like, that's cool. Like their hand is gonna be Alter, Tinker, and Fling. So they'll just like play the Alter, and you're just like, got them now. And then they're like, Tinker it for Devourer, Fling you.
It's so funny. Lan told the story about 80 Ho siding out Crows and Wreck against Devourer and Lobstercon. And the reason I thought it was funny is because when I went off of Devourers at one time I played it, I comboed Lan because I knew he didn't have Gaia's Blessing, and then he just like Crows and Wrecked me and replenished my whole board the next turn. Like that's like a clear win.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't know, right? So
yeah, I mean, like, ADO is new to the format.
Yeah, it's completely. Well, no, I mean, the story was they're like, oh, there's like these weird combo decks. You don't really have to know about them. Whereas on my explanation to Itai, I explained every single weird combo deck to him, except for maybe Full English Breakfast.
What is hilarious to me is the opposite of the question you asked earlier. Like, I have to win 45 matches against John Finkel or somebody's going to shoot me. Like, if you're John Finkel, like, what pre-modern deck do you pick? It's clearly mono blue tide, right? Like you'll win 98 matches like every single time if you're John Finkel.
That's interesting. So
I'm sure he'd win 98.
Yeah, I wonder who would be the best pre-modern player to put up against Finkel in 100 blue tide mirror matches.
There's no one in the world who could get even a 15% win rate against him. The problem is the mono blue deck is so slow on both sides that
He'll never not
there's
capitalize.
no
Yeah.
rush kill.
Yeah.
Right. So one of the reasons that red is good is because I can rush kill him before he draws the right answers. But if every game is going to go to 30 turns, he'll never lose.
Is there a deck like that because you're playing a mirror match and both players see all of their cards, it actually ends up being like, it's like if John, I guess it's hard to, I'm just saying, imagine the decks are too reactive and not proactive enough. It's like too easy for them to stop the other deck, and so the it would actually end up going to libraries, but then John would just be better at winning on library.
Right?
Yeah.
I'll just tell two John stories. One of them was when he came back for U.S. Nationals 2000. He was not qualified for the Masters Series, so he had taken time off, but we practiced together. He obviously won that Nationals with Napster, but he won the limited portion, which was what qualified him for the Masters Series. He overvalued, I'm putting this in quotes, overvalued the card Wandering Eye, which allows you to see both players' hands. Just watch John play, and he beat people who had like Megetta the Lion in their deck just because he always made the optimal play, right? Like if you took away any like not knowledge for John, both players play with their right hand face up, his win rate was 100% against the best players in the country. Like 100% is a pretty high fucking win rate. Okay?
I feel like we should run, the story's so famous, I feel like we should run it back. We should actually just run the draft format back again with John. Can we get some boosters and then see if he
he's rusty right now. He needs to
it's Nemesis. Wait, this is Mask's draft, right? Mask Nemesis.
I'll now tell three stories.
Hold on. I just want to, this is a hypothetical. So we're going to do Mask's Nemesis, like whatever prophecy that's learned. So we do Mask's draft with John and whoever the New York guys are. So it'll be John, Lan, Pecula,
whoever, yeah.
OMS, Mike Flores for fun. Do you think that John runs back Wandering Eye?
No, he needs time. So I'll tell two stories, but I'll tell three. Second one is John's comeback to the Magic scene, to the Pro Tour, was because we were working on a book together. So I had released Decade, and so BDM and was just like, oh, we could probably make a lot of money if John wrote a book. So I was just working on this book with John, and John is really bad at like teaching other people to play Magic. He's really bad at articulating his ideas. He's so intuitive, right? So he's just like, oh, let's just play Magic. And I just so happened to be qualified for the Pro Tour, and the Pro Tour happened to be teams. And like that's how Finkel Draft eventually came out of this, right? Everyone was playing at John's house. But at that Pro Tour, John didn't do very well, right? It was his first Pro Tour back in like, I don't know, however many years. He had deferred his Hall of Fame invitations for 2 years at this point. He played, he didn't do very well. And so people were like, oh, whatever, Hall of Fame ring, blah, blah, blah. John's washed. Do you know what John's position was at the very next Pro Tour?
2.
1. He won the next Pro Tour. So he went from like 2-6 or whatever at this Pro Tour, his first Pro Tour back, to winning the next Pro Tour. Even John needs a little warm-up tune-up, but once he's got it, he's fucking John Finkel again, right? So that's one. I guess he didn't need it in the Wandering Eye Nationals. He just came back, and we practiced a lot for that Nationals, to be fair. But then, so what was my other story? So, this is the reason why I think that the mono blue thing with John is like, no one will get 15%. Bakula once said that the greatest skill determiner in Magic was the Forbidian versus Drago, like quasi mirror match, where Forbidian Drago has the advantage, right? There's a Forbidian against Drago. John could win at least 70% from the Forbidian side and at least 80% from the Drago side. So you just flip it, and you just have like 2 Pro Tour skill level players, one of which is John. He would not fall below 70%, even with the disadvantaged deck. Right. So I think if you gave him 100 Andy Levine mirrors in a deck that literally has to win by attacking with Mishra's Factory, like he'll never lose. Like that's maybe like if you had to pick a player, I think Guillaume Wafotapa might be the player I would pick.
Okay, that'd actually be sweet, which is a range that
Guillaume Wafo. So when John won Pro Tour Kuala Lumpur, people don't know this story. This is a story he just told his friends, but this has been 10 plus years. John, I think, lost one match the entire Pro Tour, and he got mana screwed. And he said that he only played against one competent player the entire Pro Tour, and he beat him twice, but it was Guillaume Wafotapa.
Sounds about right.
Right. So, so the thing about Guillaume is he's really impressive in like the kind of games you think I overvalue and that or whatever. Like
that's probably why you overvalue those games.
Yeah. So like Chapin told me this story. I'm like, I was stunned. I'm like, he's just the best. There used to be this mechanic that like called Clash, that like both players reveal a card and then like something good happens if you win the clash, but then you could put a card on the bottom.
Yeah, it counts converted mana cost. Yeah.
Wafo won this match from behind that like no one thought that like he could possibly win, like the commentators and everything. And then they asked him afterwards and he's just like, I was 100% going to win. What are you guys talking about? And they're like, how did you know? I'm like, well, we clashed on turn 2.
Yeah.
So I knew what his bottom card of his deck was. And like, what? Like he literally played for the 40th card in his opponent's deck.
Yep.
On turn 2. He's just like, I had 100% to win. I just had to go through the motions. But everyone thought that like he was at a disadvantage, but he always knew what was going to happen. Like, I think like when you say that out loud, that becomes part of people's arsenal, right? That's like one of those things. Like,
yeah. Now, whenever I impulse and see my one copy of Black Vice while I'm playing Stasis, I'm like, shoot, I have to shuffle my port.
You have to shuffle, right? Like, right. But before somebody says that out loud, you're just like, but Wafo knew, you know? And so anyway, long story short, I think if you had to pick someone to play the opposite side, you pick Wafo.
I think we need to figure out a way to scam all of these like pro players and get like pre-modern decks in their hands to play like exhibition matches.
They would all love it, right? Like they would all love it. But I tried to get Andrew to play, but he sold his collection. So I'm like, oh my God, Andrew, you'd love this. He's like, problem, I literally sold all my cards. You just play digital now. So he would have had a perfect pre-modern collection.
Sheesh. Well, I am going to be out of town next week and the week after. So we'll be doing a little London and Berlin. You are welcome to tag in whatever podcast co-host you want or take a little break. I have to thank the supporters on Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/spycolony. It's been popping off. Thank you to everyone. I think we're getting to the point where I'm going to feel bad if I don't make Spy Colony merch. So that will be something that happens in the future. I wanted to make some FIWB hats and t-shirts and make a special edition for SWB that says FISWB.
What if we had like a what would Jesus do, but like what would SWB do?
Yeah, WWSWBD. That's so good. Oh man, we actually have so many people that we just refer to as letters, right? That we could just like make an entire series of shirts around that. But yeah, I'll just go ahead and shout out the last stuff that's been going in. There's so many that it's going to be hard to shout out at this point. Oh, here we go. Show me the people last 30 days. All right, last 30 days. 37 names. Sunny T Porsche, Slow King, that's Bryson, awesome guy. JP, that's our homie from the Milwaukee lacrosse area situation. I Be True, new subscriber. I wonder who that is. Tom Matelski, of course.
Oh, JP, that's Jordan, right?
Yeah. Rich Bork, Graham V, Ricardo Silva, Phil Q, Trading on Tilt, Brendan, Jake Speed, Scoredad, A Comrade Ope, Pancakes, Eichhorn, SWB, of course, Ruben with the one-off donation, Mike Arnold, a new member.
Mike Arnold?
Yeah, we got to get him more active in the Discord. If you are subscribing, there's like a little bit of a extra hoop you have to jump through, like in your profile to get access to the Discord. Just contact me if you have any issues. We got Mitch, Luis Not Vargas, of course, Trash Dog Adam Sitsis, our friend, Tomas Alexandra, That City in Texas, Dr. Manabase, Goose, parenthetical Yo-Yo, Off BTS, Judder Ming, of course, Richard Busey, of course, Matt P, Ryan Marvin, Island Home. Shout out to Rest Crew. He's doing a lot of the data and the video work for the Rest Crew. Shroom, shout out Neon Shroom or Fluorescent Fungus on YouTube. Alex KJ, K Run, Andy Levine, and Daniel Meza Madrigal. I never imagined that we would get this kind of support, but it is keeping us going. It's keeping us with weekly releases and soon to be, F It We Ball t-shirts, hopefully.
WWSWBD.
WWSWBD. I'm actually just gonna make a line of one-off merch just to give SWB, so he could have a hat that says "Fuck it SWB" and then a shirt that says WWSWBD.
So, I'm a very humble person who never toots his own horn, but I'm super proud of something that happened in the Spike Colony Discord this week, where is it Shin? It's 5H1N.
Yeah.
Shin asked a question about a deck from Extended 1999, and it was just this obscure deck.
Yeah, they're oh, I can't find it anywhere. Yeah. I think I remember about this, but I can't find it anywhere.
And I found it in 30 seconds.
From a Wayback Machine thing too, right? Yeah.
I'm and so if you want to know any obscure deck lists from back in the day, this is a good place to look. There's that, but I'm just so grateful for the community and everything. And I was reminded about that in the LAN episode that you did last week, where he's just talking about, it's just my friends are keeping me engaged in playing Premodern. He's just naming guys like Cam and Steven who we only know from Premodern.
Yeah.
And who have just been integrated into Movie Club and our regular friend group and everything. And it's just, I'm just so grateful. I actually didn't ever imagine that this could be an experience that I have. I've played Magic for over 30 years. This name of this podcast isn't the Johnny Colony or anything, but just so fun. And, thanks.
Timmy plays for fun. Actually, Johnny builds decks, which is something that you need to get back onto doing, by the way.
Every time I build a deck, you tell me F-.
Yeah, that's I have to be the J.K. Simmons to your Miles Teller. What can I tell you?
I made a deck and Chapin just said, I guess if I put in the work, this would be good, but
yeah,
I'm not gonna put in the work.
Yeah, well, what do you expect? You just get an award? I'm building new decks or tweaking okay, you don't have to build a deck. Building decks is impossible. Premodern is super hard to build decks, but just do the thing that excites you most and take a deck where you're just why is nobody playing?
Taking a picture of a deck and posting it on Instagram.
Take an existing archetype and figure out some kind of angle that
add 3 Thornscape Battle Mage to it.
Yeah, actually do that. Because that might take you down a path of the Elves thing was just for me, we had the discussion before LobsterCon. We were these are all the decks that Elves beats and doesn't.
I love
beat.
Elves.
And I think that the Elves situation is interesting because it's been throwing its head at this problem of the Goblins Burn and Replenish matchup so hard. And I feel that's actually exciting because it's uncovered territory. It's if we had an Elves deck that had 60% against Goblins and Burn, then that would just be the best deck in the metagame.
Yeah, but
right?
You can't get 60% against Goblins and Burn.
Why not? Why not try? Try to do it.
I think that just adding 3 Thornscape Battle Mage removes a lot of your auto lose to Goblins. I don't think it probably gets you to 60%. But if you just remove your auto lose, it's a big deal.
That is a big deal, right? Because if you go from 5 to 25%, that's a big deal. But I think that Call the Herd is really good against Goblins. Thornscape is really good against Goblins, and Mastercore is really good against Goblins. So whether or not
Mastercore is a little dodgy, just because if they're good at killing your Elves, your operating mana on the Mastercore becomes quite taxing.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Of course that is. So what you need to do is put yourself in a situation where first you get the Battle Mage, you kill the Sharpshooter. Then you get the Deranged to power out the Mastercore.
You just lock down the battlefield with 3 3s. You start attacking with one of them.
Right. Well,
it's hard for them to get through. If you have you just get the
right. So if they
and then 2 3 3s, you are in such a better position than every Elves deck who ever came before you.
Right. That's good, right? And then so the final layer is that you've got these 3/3s, you've got these 2/2s, then you put a Guy's Cradle onto the battlefield, and then you play a Masticore, and then you ride off into the sunset, right?
Dude, they're gonna. So the thing that I like about mine versus yours is that the Masticore is so like I don't think of a Thornscape Battle Mage as expensive, despite the fact that it costs the same as a Masticore, right? So the
Masticore costs 12. Like, don't get me wrong. I don't think that Masticore is inexpensive.
It's like a high-end mistress. Like it has ongoing costs that are like most people can't upkeep this, okay? But like the Thornscape Battle Mage is just like paying your credit card bill. Like, okay, I'm not dead.
Yeah. So having played this matchup a bit more often recently, it's been clear that you just have to kill Goblin Warchief. You have to kill Goblin Warchief, and then you have to block.
Don't you think
Goblin Lackey?
Your removal of Wirewood Symbiote is making it like if I get rid of the sharpshooter and they don't have access to Gem Palm Incinerator immediately, Wirewood Symbiote, Thornscape Battle Mage, they're kind of friendly.
Yeah. I mean, I am okay with you playing 4 Symbiote, 4 Acolyte. Like, Acolyte is better against Goblins than not Acolyte. Like, I don't think it's better against Goblins than Call the Herd, but it's good against, it's good against Goblins.
I'm definitely playing 4 Call the Herd, and I'm definitely playing at least 3 Thornscape Battle Mage.
Right.
Let's be clear about this, right? Like I'm not going to go play Elves and just play like last year's deck that's going to lose to anybody.
Right. So just take some of what I have to offer, right? Cut the Q Rangers, but you can keep Acolytes and Symbiotes. Like when I had I started this, I was over at Andy's house for a barbecue, and I was like, hey, I want to cut all these cards from Elves. And he's like, you can't cut Symbiote, because Symbiote's an engine with Acolyte. And I'm like, I'm still going to do it, right? Or actually, at the time, I was like, oh, okay, you're probably right. Because I was saying to myself, I'm like, I want to add more Thornscape Battle Mage. If I add more Thornscape Battle Mage, then Symbiote becomes really good. But if you want, you can just cut the Q Rangers, and you can trim some, whatever, and you can make room to bring those things back in.
Specifically for the league top 8, I would be very apprehensive about cutting so many untappers, because I'm convinced Rich is going to play Stasis.
I mean, that's fine, but I think I should have started with the top at the top about this. But I think that the thing that has been holding Elves back in all of the other matchups that are good but have the potential to be great is that it has too many 1/1s for 1. And at the end of the day,
which don't tap for mana.
Q Ranger effectively taps for mana, but
it's like need to. It taps for a lot of mana, or it's a parlay for even.
Yeah. So yeah. So what
do you get for 1 mana? Sometimes 1 mana.
That's exactly. Yeah. I will add that having less Q Ranger and just having Birds of Paradise, so that I have like a lot of things that tap for mana on turn 2, has been a really welcome change. But the problem was when we talked about other decks matchups against Elves, right? We were like, what does blue-white control need to do to beat Elves? Like, what does
not get run over?
Right, but what does that entail, right?
Usually, I have a really good win percentage in the long term with blue-white against Elves. It's just really contain survival of the fittest.
Exactly, right? So you contain survival of the fittest, and the 1/1s, they just can't even get past Amicious Factory, right?
Well, you can't get past the Meddling Mage after Cyborg. Just turn 2 Meddling Mage on survival. They have a bunch of 1/1s.
Right, so they can't get past the Meddling Mage. Similarly, Grotog, kind of was in the same situation. It's just like, okay, well, if I like board in a bunch of Ray of Revelation, then I have Meddling Mage in play, and they can't remove the Meddling Mage. They can't just like do anything. They're never going to get survival, right? Their 1/1s become super bad. So if you just rebalance it so that you have less 1/1s.
Are you back in the Fire Ice universe, or?
Grotog feels pretty bad right now, so I'm kind of in no universe with that deck. But if I was going to resleeve Grotog, I would consider more interaction, because trying to draw a bunch of Swords of Plowshares against Elves or Goblins is like less reliable than having extra copies.
Play Elves. Land's going to play Replenish, and he beat Stasis when he was on Replenish last time.
Yeah.
And he won that 1K with Replenish.
And he had Sabo's webs in his deck that he boarded out every game. So he's gonna bring Replenish with no Sabo's web, and instead, he'll have extra good stuff, extra Seal of Cleansing for the Stasis matchup, extra whatever you need to beat Elves. You don't really need that much. He'll have the 4th Opalescence.
It's just a landslide for Lan if I play Elves. Obviously, I might not be right about all my predictions, but imagine I'm like 1/8 of like the top 8, and I'm like, I think Rich is on Stasis, I think SWB is going to be on Dreadnought, and I think Lan's going to be on Replenish. I'm going to be on Elves. Like that lets people angle not just against me, but against each other, in a way that is super unfavorable for me.
Yeah, I also just wouldn't announce your deck choice on the Spike Colony podcast.
The last time I did it, everyone played Stasis that week.
Well, it's going to be different when it's like the top 8, right? And like it's like a super narrow meta. You got to treat it like this is Worlds, okay?
No friends.
Yeah, only
all the other competitors, and they're all the enemy.
Yeah, they're all your best friends, but they are the enemy.
For the next 72 hours, I fucking hate you.
Right. Well, you can get your testing in with your podcast co-host, and we will devise the solution based on the range of expected metagame. And
do you think Oath is going to be super bad for the top 8? Like I'm predicting all these blue decks.
I don't know. Let's have this discussion after the final player draw is announced. And if we know that Lan plans on attending, because he kind of didn't even want to do it. He's he just shows up to League because it's convenient.
It's like literally 5 minutes from his house.
Yeah, exactly. All right. This has been, you wanted 45 minutes because your voice is gone. This has been 2 hours of the Spike Colony podcast.
People had to listen to this shit for 2 hours. So, okay. Thank you.
So yeah, next week, different stuff might be going on. Stay tuned on all the socials.
Pro Tour back on. Can I watch Bob?
Pro Tour is going to start in 2 minutes. Yep.
Okay, sick. All right. Love Mike.
Love Spike Colony.
Game over.